Southern Miss Today on Southern Miss Radio. I'm your Tuesday-Thursday show host, Skylar Angus Barker. We've got a great show coming up with some information about Letha Jackson talking about the opening of her restaurant and Dr. Matthew Casey on the renaming of the Gulf of Mexico. And don't touch that dial because Donald Yee will share some things that you don't want to miss. You're listening to Southern Miss Today on Southern Miss Radio.
Hey there, my name's Grayson, and I'm the host of the newest show over at WUSM, The Underground. We're here to dig up all the diamonds in the rough you've never heard of and bring them straight to your ears. From artists right here in Hattiesburg to ones across the globe, we've always got something new to show you. If you're in the rough yourself, email grayal0604@gmail.com. That's GRAYAL0604@gmail.com. Catch us on WUSM Radio on Fridays at 5 p.m.
I'm Chris Jakomick. I served in the United States Air Force and I deployed 3 times. So in 2017, I was serving as an Air Force First Sergeant. Our motto in that role is my job is people, everyone is my business. But unfortunately in that year, I would lose my own brother, Lance Corporal Adam Jakomick, to suicide. The majority of veteran suicides are from guns. I store my weapons securely, not only for myself, but for my family. Store all your guns securely. Help stop suicide. My service never stops.
Brought to you by End Family Fire and the Ad Council.
Welcome back to Southern Miss Today on Southern Miss Radio. In USM campus news, students share thoughts on the use of AI in higher education during panel discussion. On January 31st, a panel of students discussed the concept of artificial intelligence in the classroom. Dr. Zach Taylor, an assistant professor in the School of Education, as well as the panel moderator, had this to say. I hope anyone who can attend the session will reflect on their role at the university and how they can be as proactive as possible in learning the mechanics behind AI, basic AI tools, and the ethical implications of replacing human thought in human beings with AI. In 2025, we are at the tip of the AI iceberg. And events such as the panel discussion, I hope, will continue to reveal more and more about what is to come. In Hattiesburg news, mother and her boyfriend arrested after 7-year-old girl is shot in Jones County. On Tuesday, the mother and her boyfriend were arrested after their 7-year-old girl was shot in Jones County. Leola Waters, the mother, was arrested at the Jackson Hospital, where her daughter is currently recovering. Leola was charged with child deprivation of necessaries with substantial harm. Stewart, the boyfriend, was charged with possession of a weapon by a convicted felon. Sergeant Denny Graham of the Jones County Sheriff's Department stated that the child was being deprived of the required supervision which led to the accident. Drugs and loaded weapons were found in the home when the children were left all alone. In Mississippi news, Mississippi lottery player wins $10 million. You heard that right. On one lucky Mississippi lottery player is going to be $10 million richer. The ticket was bought at the Petal Food Mart, where it matched all 5 double play white balls, plus the double play Powerball in Monday night's drawing. This win is the largest win in Mississippi lottery history and is ranked 5th largest nationally in the double play jackpot game. Congratulations! In national news, Trump's anti-media rhetoric turns to action. Within the 3 weeks since President Donald Trump returned to the White House, Donald Trump, as well as his administration, has taken action to limit news outlets, from stopping reporters from covering news at the Oval Office, ousting journalists from the Pentagon, and investigating public media companies that are targets to conservative attacks. Rebecca Hamilton, a law professor at American University, had this to say. I don't know if Trump himself has a game plan per se, but it is clear that the overall picture is of an administration that disdains a free press. Their view, and this is evident from Trump's rhetoric, his prior lawsuits, the Pentagon Office space memo, and the FCC investigations, is that any media outlets that don't align themselves with Trump's agenda are the enemy. This reflects a fundamental disrespect for the principles underlying a democratic commitment to a free press. We'll be right back with sports and weather after a word from our sponsors.
What is dedication?
My daughter is biological and my son is adopted. I love them both so much. From the morning when you wake up to putting them to bed at night and every moment in between. I think a parent's job is to protect our children, but also prepare them for the world so they become good, kind human beings.
That's dedication. Find out more at fatherhood.gov. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Ad Council.
Look through your children's eyes to see the true magic of a forest. It's a storybook world for them. You look and see a tree. They see the wrinkled face of a wizard with arms outstretched to the sky. They see treasure in pebbles. They see a windy path that could lead to adventure. And they see you, their fearless guide through this fascinating world.
Find a forest near you and start exploring at discovertheforest.org. Brought to you by the United States Forest Service and the Ad Council.
Welcome back to Southern Miss Today on Southern Miss Radio. Now for some sports. Southern Miss Athletics has an announcement. Baseball student tickets are now available to be claimed for each home game this weekend versus Lafayette. These tickets will be claimed fast, so make sure to claim yours as soon as possible. Baseball tickets will be available to claim on a first-come, first-served basis utilizing your online account. The 2025 baseball season starts this Friday, February 14th at 4 o'clock p.m. Your Golden Eagles will take on Lafayette 4 times this weekend, highlighted by the doubleheader on Saturday starting at 12 p.m. Limited tickets remain for each game, so make sure to grab them while they're still hot. Men's and women's tennis is back at the Southern Miss Tennis Complex this Sunday at 12 p.m. You won't want to miss this tennis doubleheaders, and guess what? Admission is free, so make sure to come and support your Eagles. Southern Miss Baseball is back at the Pete on Tuesday, February 18th at 6 o'clock p.m. as the Golden Eagles take on Mississippi State. To keep up with all the Golden Eagles sports activities, head on over to southernmiss.com. Now on for your weather. It looks like we've got some sunshine coming in with our high peaking at 60 degrees. Later today, we'll be having clear skies with the temperature reaching as low as 38 degrees. Friday will be partly cloudy with the high in the mid-60s and the lows in the mid-50s. It looks like rain might return Friday night or early Saturday, so keep an eye out for that. We are still at a risk for severe weather, so be careful if you're heading out on the road. Saturday will have a high of 80 degrees with the lows in the mid-50s, and Sunday will have its highs in the upper 50s and the lows reaching around 30 degrees. Up next, we have Letha Jackson talking about the opening of her restaurant. Check it out.
This is Mississippi Moments, produced by the Center for Oral History and Cultural Heritage at the University of Southern Mississippi and supported by the Mississippi Humanities Council. I'm Bill Ellison. For years, Letha Jackson dreamed of opening a restaurant in her home near Columbia, Mississippi. She discusses the humble beginnings of Letha's Barbecue and why looks can be deceiving.
When I came back to Mississippi, I had got married to my second husband. And so we had a garden here. And we said someday we were going to put us a restaurant. I bought a grill from old man I used to work for, Mr. Nick. And then I went to cooking for the public. I cooked turkeys and hams and, stuff like that for other folks, 2 years I did that before I even tried to build a restaurant in my house. Then after that, my husband built me a restaurant. And so I've been there ever since. It was a small place. A guy had given my husband a house, and he tore it down, and he built it from that. And I always tell people now, you drive up, you look on the outside, don't look like it's much, but when you come inside, and when you eat your food, you're going to be satisfied. That's the way I'm is.
Bill Ellison hosts Voices of Our People World War II, a new podcast from Mississippi Moments, sponsored by the Mississippi Humanities Council. That's Voices of Our People World War II, wherever you get your podcasts.
That was Letha Jackson. Now please give a warm Golden Eagle welcome to Dr. Don Yee. Hey, how are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
I'm so glad for every time our guests come in and they're coming in with a happy face, and it's just amazing. But first and foremost, for anyone who doesn't know you, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So I'm a full professor in the School of Biological, Environmental, and Earth Sciences, which contains biology, which that's what my role is as a biologist here. So I've been here for about 16 years and have been part of the school ever since.
Wow. And you just mentioned that you're a professor here at USM. Can you tell us about what you do for your students?
Sure. So, outside of my role as an instructor for a variety of biology and non-biology classes, including several in the Honors College, my lab is specifically focused on studying the ecology of mosquitoes, which we do a lot of that around the Gulf Coast. We also work in the Caribbean on a variety of types of species. So we basically we were trying to figure out what makes adult mosquitoes tick. And that gives us insights into how we can control them, how we can control the pathogens that they spread that make us sick. But in and of themselves, they're a fascinating group of animals.
Okay. Can you tell us any more information about mosquitoes? Something like any fun
How much
fact?
time do you have?
We've got quite a bit.
There's one of the things that, I usually start the sort of spiel about mosquitoes by telling people there's more than 3,700 species that have been identified worldwide. That's probably less than half of what is actually out there. But the great majority of them, probably less than 10%, are involved in any kind of pathogen transmission for people. So 90+% of mosquitoes don't bite us, they don't bother us, they're out doing their own thing in nature. And just like all organisms, they have a role in nature, and one of the things that we're trying to figure out is, what are those other 90% doing? So mosquitoes, we know based on, some information, because this isn't the primary reason we study them, but we know, for instance, that they have to go to plants to get nectar, just like other organisms, so they're probably involved in some way in pollination. We know that mosquito larvae and adults are food for a variety of types of animals, both, mammals and birds and other insects. And we know that they have a role in, especially in the water with the larvae, with nutrient cycling. So they help break up detritus, turn that into biomass, in other words, more mosquitoes that then can be eaten by other organisms. So they take decaying material and they make it into food for things. So as a recycler, they're important that way. One of the issues we have, though, is that we primarily focus on mosquitoes from their disease aspect, but we don't have as much data on those other things. So that's kind of one of the big black boxes for mosquitoes, is what they're actually doing out there in nature.
And that's crazy to me, because like I'm someone where like the only mosquito like things that I know of is the mosquitoes, mosquito eaters, and I only know like one type of mosquitoes. So knowing that there's all those different types out there, it's crazy, and it's like crazy to get your head around it.
Yeah, we've got probably close to 60 species in Mississippi, and there's close to 200 across the continental United States. And our diversity is relatively low compared to places like South America or Africa or Asia, where you might have hundreds and hundreds of species. But again, most of the ones that are going to be in Mississippi, most of the ones in Hattiesburg, are leaving you alone. They don't really care about you. So they're off biting birds, they're biting other types of mammals. There are mosquitoes that bite reptiles, there are mosquitoes that bite amphibians, there are mosquitoes that even take blood meals from worms, which was a kind of a big discovery a few years ago. So lots of different hosts for mosquitoes, but they're often very particular about the things that they will bite.
Okay, that's really interesting. So I know that you have a lot of areas of expertise under your belt, especially regarding research. Can you tell us more about that?
Sure. I mean, we work on a variety of mosquitoes, like I said. Some of them are medically important, some are invasive. So, for instance, I usually tell people, if you're getting bit by a mosquito here in Hattiesburg during the day, chances are it's going to be black with white stripes on it. That's the tiger mosquito. This is a species that is non-native to the United States. It's only been here since about 1985. And that's probably our most common mosquito that's in the state. And both as an adult and as a larva. And they do take about 50% of their blood meals from people. Now, they'll also bite your dog, they'll bite birds. So they're kind of a generalist. And then we work on rarer species like in the Caribbean that may only be found on one tropical island. And so we have studied their unique behaviors, their unique ecologies. And what we're learning is mosquitoes do a lot more things in the environment than we know of.
Yeah.
And there's still probably lots and lots of things we haven't discovered yet about what mosquitoes do out there in the environment. Because again, that's often not our focus of study.
Right. Okay. And with all this like information, especially about mosquitoes, but just about like animals in general, it's going to be amazing that like you're a part of Darwin Day, which is an event happening tomorrow. What exactly is Darwin Day for people that don't know?
Yeah, so people probably recognize the name Darwin. So this is Charles Darwin, the individual who, you know, went off on the Beagle expedition for a couple of years while he was in his 20s, sailed around the world gathering information. And when he came back, he spent the next 20 or 30 years compiling that information into a book on the origin of species, which introduced this concept of evolution by natural selection. So Darwin didn't invent or come up with an idea of evolution. He came up with how evolution actually works through this thing we call natural selection. And because of that, you know, some people have said this is the greatest, you know, biological idea, or maybe the greatest idea that we've had as a species to understand the way the world works. And that's what we're interested in as scientists, is figuring out why things are the way they are and how they work. So Darwin's idea of natural selection has been, you know, roundly accepted by scientists and studied ever since. And so as to sort of commemorate this contribution, since roughly the 1990s, both in the United States and internationally, Darwin Day events go on around Darwin's birthday.
Right.
And this is an opportunity to not only celebrate his birthday, his contributions, but also just science in general as a way of understanding the way the world works, right? And the way the universe works. So Darwin was born in 1809, so this would have been his 216th birthday.
Wow.
And his birthday was actually yesterday, February 12th. But we generally in our school celebrate this on the closest Friday, so that's going to be tomorrow. This is an event that I actually sort of started about 12 years ago, so this is our 12th year of doing this. And around this event, we bring in a major keynote speaker. And that person is usually internationally known, and they give a keynote address, but then we also do other things as well.
All right. That's really cool. What exactly can our students expect to see from this event?
Yeah, so this year we have 5 different events going on across the day. Starting at 8 o'clock, we have in the JST lobby, we have displays out of various biological organisms. Students can come over and get free donuts and coffee, hang out, look at all this stuff. We've got Mr. Darwin's going to be there if you want to take a selfie with him as well. And then our keynote address is, this year, we're really excited about this, Dr. Vanessa Izenwa from Yale University. She's going to be coming to give the keynote address over in the Joe Paul Theater at 11 o'clock, which is over in the Thad Cochran Center. And she's going to be talking specifically about parasites. Parasites, obviously, are organisms that often live within a host. So think of tapeworms, think of other things like that. Malaria is technically a parasite as well. And she studies how those parasites shape the organisms they live in, and how the organisms' immune responses and other kinds of reactions to those shape those parasites. And so she does a lot of work in Africa on very large mammals like buffalo, and she looks at how the social structures of those organisms also play a role in those interactions. After that, at 2 o'clock over in Thad Cochran Center, 210, we're going to have a panel discussion on the evolution of infectious disease, like what are the ones we're worried about now. So everyone thinks of COVID, but we have bird flu out there. We have a resurgence of malaria that's starting to happen. So we're going to have a really interesting panel discussion with faculty from the School of Bees, as well as Dr. Izenwa is going to be there as well. And then we're going to round out the day at 3:30 with cake and ice cream to celebrate to celebrate Darwin's birthday over in CEC 102. And then finally, we've got a scavenger hunt by our Biological Honor Society, Tri Beta, that's going to be going on throughout the day. And if you're interested in any of these events, the fastest way to get the information is just to go onto your Google and put in USM Darwin Day, and the first thing that's going to come up is our schedule of all the events, where they take place, etc.
Okay. And does the scavenger hunt has like a prize at the end?
Yeah, so they're giving out for the top 3 folks who finish the scavenger hunt complete the various tasks.
Yeah.
I believe there's some caged chicken to be had.
Ooh.
So students can take advantage of that, and you can get all that information again by showing up to JST 718 at 9 a.m. and get the information.
All right. Okay. Well, that's amazing. And is this event free, or do our students have to pay? Do they have to bring their student
All
ID?
the events are free and open to the public. It's not just
Awesome.
the students. If you want to bring your parents, bring your significant other or whatever, all the events are free and open to the public. So, come out at 8 and look at the displays and grab some coffee and donuts, and then you can make your way over to the talk at 11, and then go to the panel discussion and end your day with some cake and ice cream. And then if you've got time, you can do the scavenger hunt too. So
Yeah.
plenty of opportunities.
And you mentioned earlier about how the keynote speaker is going to be talking about like different things like malaria and like parasites. Is there any way that our students on campus can fight against those things?
Well, we're fortunate to live in a place in the world where we don't have a lot of natural parasites like this, right? So this is, we often see a lot more parasites in the tropics. There's always the tales of, there are entire television programs devoted to people who travel internationally and come back with very unusual things in their body.
Yeah.
So we're kind of lucky, but historically we had a lot of these things. Historically we had malaria. Historically we had other kinds of parasites that could get into us. I think we're more or less safe here in Mississippi, as long as you're not out, swimming in lakes or something like that, where there may be things that you could contract, and obviously not drinking that water. But overall, I think we're okay.
Okay, awesome. And I know that we're running out of time, but is there anything else that you want to share with our listeners?
I mean, just in general, this is a great opportunity for students that are interested in the sciences, but even those outside of the sciences, those maybe who are in nursing or who are in health sciences, or even in other disciplines, to come out and kind of see, learn new information from not only Dr. Nzenwa, who's nationally renowned, internationally renowned, but also see what your campus has to offer you. A lot of times students go to a class and they sit through that class, and then that's their only experience with that program. They might take, a non-majors biology class because it's part of their degree. But we have a lot to offer beyond that, beyond just, sitting in a classroom, hearing your professor give you a lecture.
Right.
So really take advantage of that. And this is part of the wider contributions to the USM and Hattiesburg community that we do.
Right. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Don Yee, for coming on today and providing a voice for our Eagles.
Yeah, no problem. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Coming up, we've got Matthew Casey on the renaming of the Gulf of Mexico. Check it out.
The Gulf of Mexico's name has been changed to the Gulf of America, which has caused outrage and confusion around the world. Dr. Matthew Casey explains more about the origin of the Gulf of Mexico's name.
Was the Aztec Empire. The people who lived in the Aztec Empire referred to themselves as the Mexica. And that's the origin of the name Mexico that we use today. And because that was such an important place for the Spaniards, that was a point of reference. And so that body of water that leads directly to this area, it was logical to call it the Gulf of Mexico.
Internationally, others outside of the United States may think of this as an inclusive deal.
People in Latin America often use the word America to refer not to the United States, but to every country in the hemisphere. And so if you leave the United States and you say America, people who are listening to you don't automatically think of the United States. If they're going to talk about the United States, they'll say the United States. And so by changing the name to the Gulf of America, some people who hear that might think of that as actually a more inclusive term and less about the United States than it probably was intended.
The U.S. Geographic Name System has yet to make the change. Until then, the name the Gulf of Mexico will remain. Stephanie Perez-Munoz, SMTV.
Thanks for listening to Southern Miss Today on Southern Miss Radio. Huge thanks to Seb Hodges, our audio engineer, and Meadow Smith, our video engineer, for keeping this bird flying. Big shout out to our assistant producer, Sam Romeo, and our program director, Adeline Fields, as well as our executive producer, Ore Ide, and our GM, Dr. Wilbur Martin. Don't forget to follow SM2 Media on social media. I'm your Tuesday, Thursday